Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Potsie Chronicles. And boy, do I gotta tell you, it gets tall in this one.
Yes, this was a giant-size episode, you might say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my. But before we jump into this episode, maybe jump shot into this episode, one thing I want to point out is in last week's episode, I mentioned that looked like Bag on the drums, but then I thought, well, they would probably mention it was Bag, right? Bag was a pretty big part of one of the episodes, so he's kind of a character that they've had before. I mentioned before, I don't really do a lot of research on this because I want it to all be new, but I did put in Bag, Happy Days, and apparently that was Bag playing the drums with no introduction. And apparently Bag is in 9 episodes, so he's on 7 more episodes. One thing that I'm wondering is, with Bag being in 9 episodes and playing a pretty big character and demons and being a drummer, do you think that the producers gave him 9 chances and sat him down as like, well, Bag, or the actor's name, we tried you as the demons leader or one of the leaders. We tried you as a drummer that only knows all shook up. We tried you in maybe 7 other different things. It's just not working out, Bag. You think the producers sat him down and had that chat with him?
Maybe. 9 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much the way it works. So that was Bag, and we may or may not see him 7 more times. Just found it odd that they didn't even introduce him since he was a character before. But nonetheless, let's jump into this week's episode.
You mean we should dunk right into this episode, right?
Yes, let's dunk right into this episode. Let's break the glass, shatter the glass. I don't even know who shattered the glass. There's been a few players that shattered the glass. Did Shaq ever shatter the glass?
I don't know.
We gotta Google that. We should do some research. But yes, let's shatter the glass and begin this episode because she's there. Now, here's a game we like to play where, even though my son's seen the episode, I have him look at the title and try and predict what he thinks this episode will be about. And before he does this, I'm going to say this. I don't know why they called it this. There was no rhyme or reason because she's there, as you'll find out. But what did you think Because She's There was about when you saw that title?
I was thinking Richie, definitely in episode 1, he was kind of like a punching bag kind of character, I feel. Now, I felt maybe in this episode, he'd be like a punching bag kind of character again. And he'd be bullied and whatnot.
Okay.
And I thought that maybe his mom would help him out because the episode's called Because She's There.
Oh.
So I was thinking she would be Marion. So I thought, I didn't know how she would help him out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like contacting some of the administration there or something.
Yeah, maybe the principal that is shocked with the tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's what I thought of when I first heard it.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would be about Marion, too, because she's there somehow, I wonder what she would say to the principals. Maybe that would be something if Richie was like a punching bag every 10 episodes, because if he was in episode 1, then episode 11, then we'd have to wait to episode 21. They're like, hey, everybody, every 10 episodes, Richie's a punching bag, That was definitely a good prediction, but it was not that. Marion was in the episode, but it wasn't about Marion.
She did not serve that purpose.
Yeah, the she was referring to somebody else, and we're going to jump right into it now. So, we have the opening credits that we talked about last week. We open it up in the Happy Days parking lot. We open it up in the Arnold's parking lot. Parking space was giant. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it was like a mall parking space or something.
Yeah, and here's the weird thing. Like, I know the cars were big back then, but has anybody seen the trucks nowadays?
Yeah.
Like, those are even bigger than those cars, and we still have these mini compact parking spaces everywhere. But there was a giant parking space. Somebody pulls in, the waitress that quit, who seems to be one of the major characters. And again, I've seen the show when I was a child. I don't remember a lot, and I don't remember that character at all. But She's coming out. And the odd thing is, I don't know if you noticed this, she named like 10 things. She's like, oh, we got 3 chili dogs, we got 4 chocolate malts, we got this. And then she's like, it's $1.50. Did you notice that?
That's crazy.
I know stuff was really cheap in the 50s, but man, like nowadays, I mean, I can't even fathom. That would have been probably what do you say, like $500 meal? I don't know if that was lunch. It was light out, so I'm guessing maybe like a $500 lunch.
I mean, that probably was the price that 150 was back then, though.
You think those guys would have had $500 though? I mean, I think it was probably more around 10. I could be wrong. I don't know. Do you think it would have been 500 back then? That thing?
I don't know.
Yeah. And then when she said that, a gorilla arm, someone was wearing a gorilla costume, handed her the money.
I wonder if it was just like seeing the therapist again. The therapist was telling him to be a gorilla this time instead of Chewbacca or Wolfman or whatever.
That could be, but then we see Potsie in the next part. I guess there could have been a time lapse. I feel like there wasn't enough time. I know what you're saying. Do you think maybe it's somebody else that goes to the same therapist as Potsie that's having similar issues, you know?
That could be it. There was, did you notice, I don't know if it was a kid or something. Did you notice that, like, kid that was kind of under the gorilla arm?
Yeah, and the gorilla arm touched him on the head. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only reason, I think that's a great theory that the therapist told Potsie maybe he needs to just be the king of the jungle and wear a gorilla costume or a gorilla arm at least. I don't know if they were in a full costume. We do know that there's an arm, but we do see Potsie very shortly after. Or Potsie maybe, I mean, it's entirely possible Potsie got out and did the thing that we're about to see next, right?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think it might be Potsie and not somebody else. I think this therapist is saving all of his cosplay for Potsie. And then the waitress makes a remark like, do you want a banana?
Yeah.
And I believe there's a laugh track. And the reason that there's a laugh track throughout, which we're going to get to something in a little bit about why the laugh track is important. So Richie comes up dressed in a suit and tie. The waitress that quits like, you look really dapper or something to that effect. And Richie's like, yeah, I got my picture for the French club. And then she starts talking French.
I wasn't sure what she was saying. I don't know if it was important what she was saying. I hope not, but...
Yeah. So I don't really know where they were going with that, but she starts talking French and then he's looking for Potsie. So that's why I think it probably wasn't Potsie, because Richie asked her where Potsie was and she didn't say he's in the gorilla costume or gorilla arm at least. But maybe...
Although he could have been wearing a mask, so then it was hard to tell it was Potsie.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure that the therapist probably doesn't want Potsie to be known wearing his costumes. I think the therapist probably the week before was like, the Cunninghams, they saw you in your Chewbacca/Wolfman mask. This must end. And then he's like, oh man, I can't be known. So then he does that, and he probably escaped. Probably while she was doing the French, I think he escaped to do this next part, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was definitely Potsie and the gorilla arm. They're like, Potsie's over in the phone booth. So then we see a phone booth in the Arnold's parking lot. There are a lot of people piled in. Ralph has not only a clipboard, but he has one of his shoestring bow ties again. And outside, who do we see with Ralph Malph outside?
Moose,
the character I thought we'd never see after he danced with the lady. This is his 3rd time. And here's what I'm wondering. Moose has never said a word. Do you think that actor got less money for not talking? I don't know the rules of, does that make him an extra, but he's an extra with a name? You know?
I think it depends on what he's doing. Like, for example, in that one episode where he was dancing with that lady, he probably got paid more since he was doing a lot more than in this episode where he's just kind of standing there.
Yeah, he's kind of like, I don't know, somehow helping Ralph Malph. He does kind of like open his mouth. Like, do you know who Penn and Teller are?
No.
They're these magicians and like one of them never talked, but the other one talked, and the other one never talked. So he's kind of like Teller to Ralph's pen, but he opens his mouth like he's gonna say something. So there that's one of two things. And is like he actually did say something, and the director like slammed his headset down. He's like, Jesus Christ, Moose, you're not supposed to say anything. We're not paying you to talk. But that was such a brilliant reaction. You know what I mean? They tried to chop around Moose's talking. So they got his part where he didn't talk, but they couldn't cut the part where he opened his mouth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think happened. Is that he's like, I'm going into business for myself, as they say. I'm going to say something, about this telephone booth when Richie comes up. And they were so mad, but they were so taken by Moose's brilliant acting that they had to keep it in, but they cut out his speaking role, so they didn't have to pay him the extra, I don't know, $10. So Richie comes up in a suit and tie. He's talking to Ralph, and Ralph's telling him that the reason all these people are piled into a phone booth is they're trying to break the record of putting people in a phone booth. And they said that there were 17 people in there, which I don't know. Did that seem like 17 to you?
It looked like 8.
At best.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've probably never seen I don't know when they would have had phone booths, really, in the 2000s. I'm sure that there were a couple, like at the beginning of the 2000s, but the odd thing about it is that there was no glass where, you know how like some of them were like sticking out of the phone booth a little bit?
Yeah.
Like that, usually there'd be like glass there. So like you could shut it and you could like call somebody, like perhaps, like before Saul Goodman was selling the disposable phones, like someone could call Saul on the payphone, so that the glass, then you couldn't hear him. But yeah, there was no glass. They were just kind of piled in there, and Ralph's like, oh, we need to tie the record. Richie, jump in there. And Richie's like, I'm in a suit and tie. Why don't you go in there, Ralph?
He said that he was the counter.
Yeah, he was the counter, and it would screw them all up if he jumped in there. So he wanted Richie to jump in there. So Richie did jump in there in a suit and tie. And that's when he talked to Potsie. And Potsie tells him that he got him a blind date so Potsie could go out with this girl, and then Richie would have to go out with her cousin. And then Richie's like, I don't want to do this. And Potsie's like, you owe me. And I was thinking that he was going to say, yeah, you owe me for leaving me for dead while I was passed out drunk at a stag party. But it was more like, no, you owe me because I went out with this girl when you went out with this girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel that, like, Richie definitely does owe Potsie, again, after leaving him for dead.
Yeah.
With the, was it the stag party?
Yeah. But Potsie's seemingly more upset about having to go out with another girl instead of, like you said, being left at the stag party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that how in the phone booths they had glass and whatnot. It looked like they were trying to use Moose as the glass.
Yeah, Moose was like the door. I wonder if they didn't have doors in the 50s. They didn't have glass. They might have not even had a door. Because back in the day, that was part of it. Like Superman would change into Superman in the phone booth. And the big thing was like he'd shut the door. I would imagine they had glass then too. But I don't know if he changed in the phone booth, if there was like a curtain up,
Yeah.
That would be weird if he was just changing and people saw him, the man change from Clark Kent. I don't know how they got around that. I'm sure they did, because I've never heard anyone say like they saw Clark Kent change into Superman in a phone booth, but there was some reason. But yeah, Moose was like the door holding everybody in.
Yeah.
So then we cut to inside of Arnold's, and they're playing like some 50s song. Did you hear it? And they kept saying, see you later, alligator. I wonder if that was a popular song back in the 50s. See you later, alligator.
I don't know. That's just a phrase now.
Yeah, I heard it at least 5 times. So I'm wondering if you go onto one of the streaming services, we're not saying which one because we're not getting any kickbacks. If you typed in see you later, alligator, it would be like top songs of the 50s. So they play that song. Richie and Potts are talking, and wow, Richie's really going all out, saying he doesn't want to go on a blind date. And he's saying, is she fat? And which, Nowadays, I don't know if he could do such things,
Yeah.
Then he goes, then I think he says, like, does she wear glasses? So I'm guessing that was the thing with the girl going back with Moose, was that she's wearing glasses, so that's why she has to date Moose, or dance with Moose.
Yeah, it seemed like it was pretty crazy back then.
Yeah, so even in like 1974, I guess they got away with saying anyone wearing glasses was not attractive. So glasses, was she fat? And then Potsie's like just really trying to talk him into it. And there's, laugh track. I think there's probably even that laugh track when he asked if she was fat. But yeah. So then we cut to the Cunningham table. Here's one thing I noticed. That table does not seem like it could fit 5 people. There were 4 place settings, but even if you moved a chair, it would be too crowded for 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on with Chuck. Doesn't even seem like there's a place for him, but they're having dinner. Howard and Marion are talking about playing bridge with the Malph family, Ralph Malph's parents. And Marion mentioned something about how she should team up with Ralph Malph's mother because, like, she said that the spouses always fight. And here's what I'm thinking. She doesn't want to play with Chips Cunningham?
Yeah, what? Why would you not want to play with the late, great Chips Cunningham?
Yeah, so she's really trying to get out of playing with Chips Cunningham. And I don't know what bridge is. Do you know what bridge is? I always hear about bridge, but like, that can't be 21 because they would just say 21, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it can't be like poker because I think they would say poker. I don't know what bridge is. They kind of do it a little later. It's not like they're building a bridge out of cards, but something is going on. So anyways, apparently while they're having their bridge night, there's going to be a costume party in the basement of the Malph house. And that's where Richie is going to be taking his date. And then Joni mentioned something about necking, right? Doesn't she say, like, that's where they kissed in the basement?
I think so.
Yeah, and then Howard's like, well, how do you know this? And she's like, some boy tried to kiss her, but she punched him in the nose.
And it's kind of crazy that she had not told her parents about that at all.
Yeah, this is the first they're hearing of it.
Yeah, because I remember they're like, you never told us this.
Yeah, so they're hearing of it as they're talking about the Malph costume party. Why do you think they're having a costume party? Why not just a regular party? It doesn't appear to be Halloween. They didn't say like, hey, it's Halloween, everybody. Let's all dress up. They're just like, yeah, it's a costume party in the basement.
That's a good question. I think maybe knowing Ralph Malph.
Yeah.
He's like the comedy guy. So maybe wearing costumes while this romantic time.
Yeah.
Romantic party or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I feel like he wanted to add comedy with putting them in these costumes of their favorite characters and whatnot.
Well, that makes total sense then. Yeah, absolutely. So then Marion's like, who wants cake? And everyone's like, I do. Did you see that cake?
Yeah, it was crazy.
That was a crazy cake for like a normal, I don't know, Wednesday night. That looked like a birthday cake. I don't know what's going on with all this stuff, but they all got this big fancy cake after their dinner. So they're eating the cake, and then we cut back to Arnold's. Ralph Malph is watching Richie play pinball, and the Fonz is watching. So Richie's playing pinball. He's like, I only need 50,000 more to get a free game, but I've only got 1 ball left. And Fonz is like, shoot the ball. And Richie's like, what? And he's like, I said shoot the ball. So as he does this, Fonzie pulls out a pocket knife and he maneuvers the score to make Richie have a free game. Fonzie's doing all kind of stuff with the property at Arnold's. He's riding on walls. He's using his pocket knife to get a free game.
Potsie comes up and Richie tells him that he's going to win a free game. And then Potsie's saying that's like kid stuff.
Yeah, he says it's kid stuff. So Richie abandons his game. I guess Richie's, like you said, he is like a punching bag. Why would you lose your free game that you worked so hard for Fonzie to take his pocket knife out on,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so then Potsie's like, hey, I got a picture of this girl that you're going out with, so she won't be a blind date. And here's something that I noticed. Speaking of songs, they're playing the song 16 Tons, which was a popular song, I'm guessing in the 50s, sometime around there. And like, I feel like that was a jab at weight yet again. 16 tons as he shows the picture of the girl.
Man, it's kind of crazy how they're all like mentioning weight in this episode and whatnot, you know?
Yeah, and it's going to get even crazier as you'll all see later. So then he's like, oh, that looks like Jane Mansfield. Do you know who Jane Mansfield is?
No.
She was a popular actress in the 50s that all the gentlemen, not all, but many gentlemen liked. Kind of like Marilyn Monroe. Do you know who Marilyn Monroe is?
I've heard that name.
Okay. That was also, I can't do it, but that was also in that Billy Joel song, but I don't know what we could do with lyrics. But yeah, so he's like, she looks just like Jane Mansfield. And Potsie's like, that is Jane Mansfield. It came with the wallet. Then he gets another picture out and she seems to be obscured by like a shadow. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I can barely see her. And then he's like, oh, she's very mysterious.
It looks just the same since you can see just use your imagination.
Yeah, that's right. He saw one side of her and he's like, well, that side looks good. And it's like, yeah, use your imagination for the other side. So that made Richie feel much better, apparently, about going to this costume party on a blind date. So we cut to Richie and Potsie going to pick up their dates. Potsie's dressed like Davy Crockett.
That was great.
Yeah. Here's one thing that I'm always wondering about these. Again, I don't know what the price was in the 50s, but like when people dress in these elaborate costumes for just like a costume party, like I'm wondering like how and why. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're going for like, I don't know, I guess they were going for a little bit of time here. Potsie had to go to like, I don't know, maybe Ralph Malph's father's shop and buy all this stuff, just for like one night. Like, how much is that? That's a lot of effort,
Yeah.
I feel like it is at least. And then Richie's like some kind of like Shakespearean prince, isn't he?
Yeah, I really couldn't tell what he was. I could tell for the most part what some people were, but him, I didn't know.
He kind of looked like he was dressed like, I think that's Shakespeare. I don't know, like kind of that kind of old school look. So he was, something like that. He was wearing tights and some kind of garb. So they come in dressed all up. Potsie's date, I can't remember what she was dressed up as. Do you?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. But then there's a lady kind of crouched over working on Potsie's date's costume that we don't remember. She's wearing like a Statue of Liberty garb. They show her kind of bending over like from the front. Kind of on her knees, like Richie thinks she looks attractive, so he's all excited. He's like, wow, maybe he doesn't do that, but yeah. And then he introduces himself, and she stands up, and she's taller than him, and that's like the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant by it's gonna get tall in this episode.
Yeah, so she's taller than him, not like Andre the Giant taller than him, kind of like, probably like, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5. 6 inches. I'm not going to say the number after 6.
6, 7.
Yeah. Yeah, not that tall, but yeah, but taller than him. And then they play that Happy Days theme, like, ooh, Richie's really in a pickle, as they cut to commercial.
Yeah.
So that's the whole hang up, if you will, of the story, is that his date's taller than him.
I gotta say, did he get really disappointed after, like, he saw how tall he
Yeah, like he had this look on his face, and then they play the Happy Days song, like, oh no, you know what I mean? I don't know. This seems like, I don't want to say anything bad, but I feel like the writers weren't really trying this episode. You know what I mean? Like, they could have maybe made his date be the girl he knows this could be an alternative episode. The girl that he knows eats tuna fish sandwiches every day, and then like Skizzy could show up like banging down the door. You know what I mean? Like that would be like a real pickle for Richie to be in. Then his date's taller.
Here's what else could happen. Bag steals his girl.
Bag could actually come in and steal his girl, and he could be like a cowboy, since he apparently is something different every episode. Like he comes in like from, I don't know, New Mexico. Did they have New Mexico in the 50s? I think so.
Probably. I
Yeah,
think so.
I think so. Yeah. So, like, Bag comes in from New Mexico, like, all dressed up as a cowboy, and he steals Richie's blind date that he ends up really liking. Like, that would be a real conundrum. We just came up with two conundrums. Like, girl being 3 inches taller than him, to me, doesn't seem like, I mean, I don't know what it was like in 1974, which I think is when this aired, but doesn't seem like a huge deal for the girl to be taller than him, you know?
Once again, Hollywood producers.
Yeah, we just gave you two. Yeah, how about this, Hollywood producers? A Western. I don't know when the last giant Western is, but we're due. Bag comes to Richie's town. Richie's the local sheriff. Bag comes to cause havoc, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That writes itself.
Do you think Bag would be the main character in that?
Yeah, Bag would be the villain, don't you think?
Yeah.
And Richie would be like the good sheriff. You know what I mean? Like the sheriff that's been coming to Richie Cunningham's town. You know?
Yeah.
Like a big family man. But Bag is coming in. He's gonna steal some gold bars. I don't know what villains would do in like the Westerns. Is that something they do, like steal gold bars? Like they put that like kerchief around their face, right?
Yeah.
Is that cowboys?
I feel like what they do is just, I don't know, rob some banks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, rob some banks. He would come and I don't know if that's Yosemite Sam, but like he'd have those two guns and he'd like just go boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Kind of like Yosemite Sam. Why not? You know? And then he'd be like, I'm going to be taking these banks. How many banks, though, were in the Old West? Would there just be one for him to rob, though, in Richie's town?
Probably 2.
Yeah, let's say 2. So, yeah, so they do the whole thing with one bank he does rob, and then Richie's trying to thwart him from robbing the second bank, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Bag, and you can even, I can just see those posters now. Would it be Bag versus Richie or Bag versus Cunningham?
Oof. Probably Bag versus Richie.
Yeah, and you could have a whole marketing campaign. This is a gajillion dollar idea where you could have these buttons and people could say, I'm with Bag or I'm with, did you say Richie or Cunningham? I can't remember now.
Richie.
Yeah, I'm with Richie, you know? And have the different characters on the buttons. Ton of merchandise with this. Feel like it's, yeah, billions of dollars of merchandise, Bag and Richie.
I feel also it's kind of like crazy that with the irony with the character Bag,
yeah,
would be like holding bags of money.
Yeah, that could be how he got his name. Yeah, this is perfect. It literally writes itself. Bag carrying bags of money out of Richie's first bank. Is he gonna rob the second bank, or is Richie gonna thwart him? You gotta come and find out. This could be like after the Fonz and Orangutan movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we come back from the commercial. The 4 being Potsie, Potsie's date, Richie, and Richie's date go down to presumably Ralph Malph's basement, apparently, which I gotta say, I know probably back in the 70s they like to save money. I think even now they like to save money on sets, but Ralph Malph's basement looked eerily similar to the frat party set last week. Didn't you think?
Yeah, it all looked like just like the frat party. It had the same blue walls and white and whatnot, so yeah.
The only thing missing was Roscoe, sadly.
Did they have the frat party at Ralph Malph's basement?
You know what? What if actually that frat was in Ralph Malph's basement and that's how they got the gig? Like Mr. Malph's department store isn't going so well, so he's like in front of the family, which is Ralph Malph's mother. Ralph Malph. Does Ralph Malph, do you think he has any siblings, or do you think he's an only child?
I'd see him as an only child, and that's why he's always making these jokes towards other people, you know?
Yeah, he's got to get that attention. Yeah. So Ralph Malph's father, he sits down Ralph and Mrs. Malph, and he's like, guys, I got some news. The store's not doing so well. Someone stole my mannequin, and we're going to have to rent out the basement to a frat. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that is, where do you think the frat was this night, though, when they had their party? Were they there?
I don't even know, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be kind of the one thing that doesn't quite fit, but I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. So they all come in. Ralph Malph is dressed as Super Ralph. It's not quite Superman. It's a different color, probably to avoid lawsuits from the Superman franchise. And there's a big R on his costume.
Super Ralph.
Yeah, so as they come in, like Richie and Potsie are over by the punch bowl, and Ralph Malph comes up to Richie and is like, I guess you and your date don't see eye to eye. And there's like a pause as he does that face. And this is the one time there's no laugh track. There's literally a laugh track for everything else.
Poor Ralph Malph is trying his best and he never gets a laugh track.
Yeah.
It's always complete silence.
Yeah, he doesn't even get a laugh track. Like, I can see that they're like showing that the high school students aren't laughing at him, but like to not even get a laugh track when they're literally having them laugh at like, does she wear glasses? Like he should have got at least a courtesy laugh track. But then Fonzie comes in with his leather jacket and everyone's like, Fonzie, why didn't you dress up? And he's like, I am dressed up. I'm dressed as Marlon Brando. And then he shows that part of his shirt is ripped. I've never seen any of those Marlon Brando movies, so maybe that means something, but yeah. And then did you notice too, he took Richie's punch, or he took somebody's punch from him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't even ask. He just took it from him. And then Ralph Malph's like, looks great, Fonz, looks great. Yeah, so Fonzie's there with his date.
Didn't he also say that his date was dressed up like she was ready to go to a jungle or something?
Yeah, I think she was like maybe Jane from Tarzan and Jane, but Fonzie was just or Marlon Brando, not Fonzie. Yeah. Upstairs and we meet the mouse. That would also be a good movie, Meet the Mouse.
Yes, that would be great.
All kinds of movies are coming up here. So Ralph Malph's father and wife are playing bridge with Howard and Mary. And apparently Marion doesn't know how to play bridge either because she's saying all these cards. And apparently she is playing with Howard because Howard's like, don't tell everybody, Marion. Like he's getting really aggravated as she's telling him what cards that she has. Yeah, it just was wild.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the basement. And isn't Richie talking to his date? And like he's sitting on the arm of the couch so that he's taller than his date. Isn't that what's going on?
Yeah, he sits on the arm, and I remember she says like, oh, I just really like to sit here. And she's like, oh, that's weird. Everyone else that I've met says that the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, I'll just move over then.
Yeah, so do you remember anything they talked about?
Not during that scene, no.
Okay, so they're talking about stuff, we don't know. It wasn't anything like too terribly important, but Richie does have the hang-up.
We forgot to take notes, by the way.
Oh, yeah, we really need to remember to take notes, yeah. So then we cut back to the Malphs and the Cunninghams playing bridge. Howard's really getting fed up. Marion's asking if she should play these specific cards, and Howard's like really just mad, like, you don't tell everyone what cards you have. And then Marion or somebody's like, I haven't heard anything downstairs. You should go downstairs, Mr. Malph. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go downstairs. And then Howard's like, no, I'll go downstairs. So then Howard gets ready to go downstairs. And Howard goes downstairs. And then before Howard opens the door, we see literally everybody there is making out. Like every couple. Oh, we forgot that someone is dressed as a cigarette pack, which certainly you wouldn't see here in 2026.
That was just the weirdest thing, too. Like, one, it didn't look like they could see out of that costume. Like, normally, let's say you're dressed up as, like, a Cheerio box for some reason, right?
Yeah.
You would have, like, your head poking out in some shape or form, so then you could see everything, breathe and whatnot. But in that cigarette pack, it did not look like you could see anything or breathe out of that thing. I mean, I'm sure it makes it hard to breathe with cigarettes, but like still.
Yeah, that was wild. Didn't like Fonzie even see that and he turned and he goes, "Hey," doesn't he do the A at the cigarette box somehow?
I think he does that later.
Oh, he does do the A.
Yeah.
I feel like he did make some kind of mention of the cigarette box. He said something or he gave it a look. I don't know. But do you think the Fonz smoked?
I bet you he did.
Yeah. He might have gotten confused and thought that Like maybe there was a real cigarette in there or something. Who knows? But yeah. So they're all making out, and everybody except for Rich and his date, because I guess she's tall. So, he's not attracted to her since she's 3 inches taller than him. And she's noticing that everyone's making out with them. And then Richie's like, oh, those two are engaged. And then like they stop kissing, and the girl's like, I don't usually do this on the first date.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I think they also make mention of just like, oh, what do you want to do? And then he's like, oh, I just want to sit here. And then she's like, no, I meant like in college or whatnot.
Yeah, and then he says he wants to be a lawyer. Did you know that Richie Cunningham wanted to be a lawyer? I didn't until this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does, because I don't know what Richie does, honestly. I guess maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. But yeah, so Richie wants to be a lawyer.
Richie Goodman.
Yeah, Better Call Richie.
Yes.
Wait a minute. So we could have Richie not only as a sheriff, but we could have Richie as a lawyer as well, too. Who would he represent? Skizzy?
Yeah, or the Fonz, one of the two.
Yeah,
Fonz would be like the Lalo.
Yeah, that's true. Fonzie, though, is kind of doesn't ever seem to get any trouble. I mean, he did leave a scene of a crime and he didn't really get anything, but maybe they would have to make him get into some kind of trouble with the law in this series,
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Howard comes down and I think doesn't even talk to Richie. Like he comes down to check and he's like, you don't even need to turn the lights on. Like he doesn't even seem to care what's going on.
Yeah.
And he talks to Richie and he sees like how tall she is. And he's like, she's the tall one. So like it begins bad, but then he starts telling Richie that like it doesn't matter that she's taller. Apparently Marion's taller than him.
Yeah, I know Howard is pretty short.
Yeah.
But like I haven't really noticed that, really. I never really thought about that.
I don't think, have we ever seen them? We've had to have seen them stand up next to each other. So I don't know. What I'm thinking is that Marion's like almost as tall as him, and they're all going crazy, like, wow, she's taller than him. You know what I mean? Like, instead of her being like remarkably shorter. But I don't know. We need to check the next time, if there is one, if they stand up next to each other to see if she's taller, because I didn't notice that either.
Yeah.
So he gives Richie a pep talk that, like, hey, it doesn't matter that she's taller. She seems nice, all this kind of stuff. And then as he leaves, the Fonz pops out to tell him that so I really think he is older, because if he's telling Howard that he's the chaperone and everything's A-okay, like if Potsie said that, it wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean? But it seemed to make sense to Howard that Fonzie's down there chaperoning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Fonzie, family show, by the way, goes, hey, everybody, let's play strip poker. And then, like, Howard jumps back in.
And then the Fonz goes, hey.
Yeah, he tricked Howard with this joke that they're playing strip poker. So, yeah. Ralph is like, I have to end my party at midnight. Seems pretty late in the 50s for a party. But again, they might not have had clocks back then. Then he and Potsie, I think they decide that they're going to go, like, to the lake or to run out of gas or something. They're taking their dates, and then, like, Richie's, like, horrified with the thought, because the girl's 3 inches taller than him, that he would have to go too. And she's all excited. She's like, oh, are we going to the lake? And he's like, no.
We're doing something else.
Yeah.
Or I think he says something, oh, no, we're going to do something better.
Yeah. And then Potsie gave him his car, or his parents' car, it turns out, because Potsie's going with Ralph Malph, because I guess they're going together to either run out of gas or go to the lake. And then we see Richie driving in the car, right? Is that next?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Richie's driving with his date, and they run out of gas, and she's all excited. She's like, we ran out of gas, thinking that, that they're going to, make some time together. And he's like, oh, and like, he's like really trying to explain, I didn't mean to run out of gas. I didn't, like, really so uncomfortable about it that they didn't mean to run out of gas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ends up seeing if there's a spare gas can in the trunk. Can you carry gas in your trunk? That seems like a fire hazard.
Yeah, I was about to say, that doesn't sound very safe.
Yeah, I mean, even in the 50s, when apparently there were, like, no laws and nothing, like, it seems like even then they would have known not to carry around, like, a gas tank in the trunk everywhere. So he ends up getting like not a gas tank, but like a kind of old timey thing that you'd water the flowers with, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a name for it that's pretty simple that's escaping me right now. So he gets that out, and then like he's trying to figure out how to get gas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Fonzie with his lady friend rides up in his motorcycle. So Fonzie comes up, and Richie's like, Fonzie, can we have some of the gas from your motorcycle? Which, how are they going to do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, what kind of tools do they have? You know, because if you see that motorcycle, it's like in that little part. Like, how they don't have like a siphon.
Then the Fonz is like, give me your dagger.
Yeah, so Richie apparently had a dagger the whole night, I guess. I don't know. He must have been some kind of Shakespearean something. But yeah, he gets a dagger. Fonzie, like, checks his gasoline with Richie's dagger, and he's like, he has a half tank or something, right? And then he's like, I can't leave you stranded out here. I'm going to give you a little bit of gas. So somehow he gets the gas into the flower pot. And then, then when they leave, Richie tries to get it out of the flower pot into the gas tank, which, as you would know, is impossible. Which I wonder how, it seems impossible how he got it out of his gas tank, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that dagger, like he checked it with it, but he couldn't have siphoned it with the dagger. So he's trying to get it in, and then his lady friend, her Statue of Liberty torch, and like takes it off and uses the torch as a siphon. Apparently, there's no bottom to that torch because, you know what I mean? They pour it through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they get gas, and then they drive off.
What was like that torch made out of? Like, because it couldn't have been made out of paper, right?
I hope not, because if they put gas down it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe was it plastic? I don't know.
It might have been plastic.
I wonder if Howard sold any of these costume parts, you know what I mean, from his hardware store.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's why Howard was so excited about the costume party. Is like maybe he sold her that siphon as a, but I guess he would have seen her before. He might have said something like in the basement, like, hey, I know her. I sold her her torch.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then they drive off. Then we cut to, I don't know if it's her house. I guess it's her cousin's house because apparently she's visiting. And then Richie's like, I had a good time. I'm like, you did? All you're trying to do is avoid it. You're literally begging the Fonz to get you guys out of there. And then she's like, yeah, I had a good time too. And again, I'm like, you did?
Yeah.
Like this guy has been like giving you the slip the whole night.
It's like, also, I feel like they were all kind of awkward too the whole time, you know?
Yeah, to say the least. And then they're awkward here. He's like, I had a good time. And then she's like, I had a good time. And then he's like, are you coming back anytime soon? I'm like, what?
Yeah, they did not seem like they enjoyed it at all, especially compared to all the other couples. All the other couples are like all making out and whatnot.
Yeah, like I could have seen this if like they would have like started making out like once they had the gas or something, you know what I mean? But like there was nothing up until that point that made them seem like they were having a good time together, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't even know. I just was so like, wow, you know what I mean? You guys want to see each other again? And she's like, yeah, I might be coming up in the summer, which, when was this? Was this, they didn't say Halloween, so I don't know. So it might come in the summer, and he's like, you want to see each other again? He doesn't even say like date. He's like, you want to see each other again? She's like, I'd like that. And again, I'm like, you would?
Yeah, they did not match.
Yeah. So we leave it there. And they decide apparently they're going out, or not even going out, they're seeing each other again, perhaps. Then we cut to the bathroom. Joni and Rich are, for some reason, both in, I'm guessing there's only one bathroom. I guess in the 50s, they probably only did have one bathroom, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're both in the bathroom, and Joni, I don't know what Richie's doing. Oh, yeah, he was brushing his hair, because I was wondering if Cut was going to be there, too. Yeah, he's brushing his hair. And Joni's like, you have to give me a nickel for your secret. And Richie's like, what secret is that? And she's like, you have to give me a nickel. And then she's like, I'm not going to tell Dad that you were out till 2, right?
Yeah.
Which, why were they out till 2? Like, it seems like Richie would have wanted to drop her. Oh, probably because they ran out of gas.
Yeah.
So She gives her the nickel. Then, if that weren't enough, Howard comes in.
He doesn't just come in, he barges in.
Yeah, he barges in. So we have 3/4 of the family that lives there, and all we need is Marion. Chuck doesn't really technically live there, so I'm going to say 3/4. So Howard comes in, Joni exits, and doesn't Richie say something like, I just gave Joni a nickel? And then Howard's like, oh, because you were out till 2 a.m. And he's like, how did you know? And he's like, I gave her a dime.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's it. Then we wrap and there's credits. So that was the episode Because She's There. I still don't know why it was called Because She's... The only thing I can think of is like maybe Potsie, like after that was like, you're going out with her again? And then Richie shrugs and he goes, because she's there. You know?
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
I don't really see any other way.
There's really no... Maybe that was left on the cutting room floor with Moose talking. All right. So that was the episode. Is there anything that we missed? Anything you wanted to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
All right.
Yeah.
Before we end this thing,
yes,
we forgot about Helpful Howard.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible Howard. Now, I know what I'm going to say. And
I know what I'm going to say, too.
I'm going to say Horrible Howard.
Ooh.
Now,
tell me more.
Here's my justification, right?
Okay.
One, he's getting all pissed about Marion not knowing how to play the game.
Yeah.
Which, I know it can be frustrating, but I feel like you just gotta calm yourself down in those scenarios. And then second of all, sure, he did give Richie some advice saying, oh, you can love tall girls and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it didn't really seem to help him in the end. So that's why I say Horrible Howard.
Well, that definitely makes sense. I could definitely see that. I'm going to say Helpful Howard. And here's why I say Helpful Howard. Yes, I agree with you. He didn't really handle the bridge game well, but let's not forget, this is Chips Cunningham we're dealing with here. This is a professional. Of course, he's going to be kind of frustrated with a novice player that's saying her cards.
Don't you think, though, that he'd be happy that he's playing against a novice player, though, considering it'd be an easy win for him?
Well, no, because the novice was on his team.
Oh.
So she was losing for him. So that's why he was so frustrated, because he's Chips Cunningham and he's got someone that's literally telling everybody what her cards are. So
why weren't they sitting together then?
That's a good question. I don't know how that works when you have a teammate. Because, yeah, do you know, like, your teammate's cards?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, would he look at it and she would... I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But, yeah. He was apparently teammates. I guess he talked to Marion into being his teammate, and he was a little frustrated. Yes, I don't know that I would put that on the Horrible Howard side, but yeah. And then, like, kind of he veered toward Horrible Howard with his, she's a tall one, isn't she? But then I feel like he did what he could, but Richie just wasn't interested. Like, I don't feel like that he swayed Richie that someone being, 3 inches taller than him was a big deal. Like, he was trying to tell him that, but it was really up to Richie. And Richie just decided, like, he didn't want someone 3 inches taller than him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Helpful Howard. So I go Helpful Howard.
Well, it looks like we're going to be different on him this one.
It's a split decision this week.
What did you guys think? Helpful Howard or Horrible Howard?
Yes, leave us a comment. Helpful or Horrible Howard. So, that was Season 1, Episode 11, Because She's There. That was also the episode of the second of 3 discs of Season 1. So if it moves on, we'll be moving on to disc 3 of Season 1, because if you go back and listen to an earlier episode, we're watching all these on DVD. So the question remains, do you want to watch another episode?
For the sake of Ralph Malph, yes.
All right. Very nice. We move on to the third disc Again, I want to just keep reminding, it's supposed to get much better after the second season. That's a long way away, but I do want to bring that up every week, hoping that that will convince you. So, if you liked it, please leave us a nice review. Please like and subscribe. Tell everyone you know, unless you didn't like it. In that case, please keep it to yourself. And you can go back and listen to our older ones if you're just discovering us now. And thank you for listening.
What's Happy Days?